Welcome to my banner, and it's almost like it's back to Do It Yourself Wednesday. Today we're talking about a very, very important topic. One subject that, you usually not take time to prepare for it, but you need to learn the skill because we've got tricks. And my guest is a perfect person to share some useful tips on this particular one, how to develop your public speaking skills. And I'm sure some people will be wondering, but I don't go and stand on any podium to speak. But sometimes there are little gatherings. Sometimes you give speeches at work. It's not really like a speech, but there are meetings and you have to do some presentation. That's also public speaking. So we're talking about how to develop that skill with Samuel Jonathan. He's president, Royal Center for Public Speaking. We've done this before, not like this one. Good morning.
Good morning, Mama V. How are you?
I'm well.
Good.
Yeah, you're good yourself?
I'm happy as usual.
Cool. Yeah, you always say very beautiful things. And you make it very easy to learn as well. So today we're talking about how to develop your public speaking skills.
Yeah.
So it means that public speaking is a skill.
It is a skill and it can be developed. So Samuel Jonathan would say, whatever you do not develop cannot grow.
Oh.
We all have that ability, but whatever you do not develop cannot grow. Now, somebody may be wondering, what's public speaking? Because I love the examples you gave earlier on. Some people would say, I'm not a politician, I don't need it. Some people would say, well, my employees, they don't go outside to speak. I say, well, but you make presentations. A manager has to give the quarterly report for the department. That is public speaking, because public speaking is the art of communicating with an audience in a formal setting. So if the setting is formal, you have an audience, you have information to share or a message to convey, an HR manager announcing a new company policy, that is public speaking. And so it's very important that we develop these skills, otherwise we'll fumble, flop and fail all the time.
But some people would say they don't have it at all. They don't have it at all.
That's not true. Now, we know we have some brothers and sisters who are physically challenged. They're mute or they're deaf. That's understandable. Other than that, God has given us the voice and didn't charge us anything. But you've got to develop that ability to stand in front of people, make eye contact with them, engage them, sustain that engagement, and have a very interactive session. And a lot of people think, well, as long as I tell them the information, that's it. We have a lot of CEOs that we do coaching for, and they just go to the podium and they just start. I say, wait a minute, you've got to court your audience, break the ice. They say, Mr. Jonathan, I don't need to tell them, I'm the CEO. This is the information, take it or leave it. I said, no. So when we take them through the one-on-one sessions, they say, Mr. Jonathan, I never knew that this is the best way to do it. And now they tell me that there's more buy-in from the employees since they change their presentation approach. Because if their approach is wrong, the outcome can never be right.
Do you need a certain voice to be able to speak publicly? Because sometimes some people say, I don't have the voice.
As long as you're able to speak, it can be developed. Now, there's some people who have a squeaky voice. So you could have a gentleman who would say, good morning. Like we're currently doing some recruiting, and one of the requirements before you can come for the interview, you have to leave a 30-second voice message introducing yourself and explaining why we should hire you.
Okay.
So our recruitment process goes beyond the CV. And it's amazing sometimes the mismatch between the voice and the portrait that they submitted as the pictorial representation. And sometimes they say, sir, are you sure this person? So some guys, well-built, can say, good morning. But with the right coaching, they can add a bit more treble and it can become good morning. Because people can determine if they'll go one step with you or disconnect with you based on the voice. You call on behalf of your company, you leave a message, and the perception determines the reception. So with coaching, you can have the right voice or improve your voice to connect with your audience.
Can you coach for somebody to get a deeper voice, for instance?
It's possible. It'll take a while, yes. Because with voice coaching, and it's amazing, as you can increase the range. I also sing, by the way, so so it's possible. You can actually take a person up to 2 octaves higher than what they usually would sing. And you can do the same thing with speaking. And so with different people, it would take a while.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's possible.
Back to how to develop that skill of public speaking. How do you do it?
There are 3 daily habits of world-class speakers, and I'm going to share them this morning. The first one is reading. Reading. Readers are leaders. One of the reasons why people sometimes feel nervous in front of an audience is because they're not very knowledgeable about the subject. You can't give what you don't have. And so when you learn something, when you learn a subject matter so well, you actually master that subject. You don't have to memorize the script. If you find yourself in a situation whereby you've left your notes at home, or the laptop is malfunctioning, and
or your PA forgot to pick up the speech,
the one you edited, because you read a lot, you've mastered the subject, you can vary the content without distorting the intent. And that comes from mastering. Another thing when it comes to reading, expanding your vocabulary. Probably at the next episode we'll talk about the top 10 most common phrases that our public officials use. Modalities are in place. Plans are far advanced. We are on it. And all these, you see, but when you read wide, your vocabulary is broad. So rather than say, which we call people not to say.
Yeah.
That
was one of that was I shared that with you the last time you were with us. It hasn't completely gone. But it usually would come when I am not so prepared for something.
There you go. So part of the preparation is mastering what you're going to share on.
But you know, when you go for an interview, and maybe we will talk about that broadly. When you go for an interview, even though you're prepared, it surprises you. When you're asked a question, then you'd want to say that, you want something to bring you into it.
And there are ways by which you can handle that. The first thing is to appreciate the question, and then you proceed. You see, most of the time, the only lasts for about a second. Very long ones will go for a second and a half. So if you can pause, give a meaningful pause. If you notice now, I paused.
Yeah.
But yet, you can tell from my posture that I'm not absent-minded. I'm still here with you. And you can do that in interviews, and the answer comes. Why? We've got 18 million brain cells. We've got one mouth. Those 18 million guys, if you allow them, they can think faster than your mouth can speak. So you can give a meaningful pause. Another technique is to slow down your pace. Usually the is because we're speaking faster than we think. So if you can slow down the pace or the tempo, it allows you time to think 1 second ahead, and your mouth drops it like it's hot.
I've got another quick one on it.
All right.
What if you're reading? Like I was reading the news. Oh, I just said
You go, girl. I'm with
so
you.
I wanted to ask you, like, is it like some sort of style? Because sometimes it's not like you can't remember what you want to say, but it's just that you're used to it and you say
You know, one thing I love about you is that you're willing to change. There are people who are not willing to change, so for that willingness, I celebrate you.
Thank you.
Now, what you could have done there, you see, the fact that you even caught yourself means that you're aware. You can't manage what you're not aware of.
Okay.
So now you're monitoring, and once you monitor, then you improve. You say, you know what, I just said, but let me pause. All right, next time, I'll make sure I don't do it. And that's how you grow. You know, Rome wasn't built in a day, and the walls of Jericho didn't come down overnight. But it takes time, and as long as you keep on showing up, that's what I tell people when it comes to the daily habits of world-class speakers. The black stars, they need an invitation to camp to show up for training. But you and I, we can show up for training day in, day out. You can even use your mind as your training ground, which is the third daily habit of world-class speakers. I'll get to the second when we do this together.
Well, okay. I've got other questions on the AM.
All right.
But let me cut it because we're talking about how to develop, and we started with the reading. And I think you were on the second one, which was not on the second point though, but still building on the reading.
So on the reading, yes.
Like develop
your vocabulary. Because you see, you can use a variety of words for one particular word. Usually, when we say we're thinking, what's that word that goes in there? And so, if you have an enriched vocabulary, and I always tell people, if you've perfected tree, ga, fancy, and all that, awesome. Why don't you spend more time on a language which is not your mother tongue, but is a language you know you need to excel in corporate Ghana or in the business community? English. 3 minutes a day, learn 2 new words. So when you go through our coaching programs, you inculcate the habit of learning 2 new English words per day. The correct pronunciation, not the Ghanaian pronunciation, the correct pronunciation, because your audience will eventually go beyond the borders of Ghana. So you've got to learn the proper diction, the spelling, the meaning, and be able to illustrate that word. So that's very important. So once again, the we're thinking what word goes in there. And if you're a professional speaker or a public speaker, you know the British will say public speaker, Americans will say professional speaker. When you find yourself on stage, rather than go, why don't you just share with the audience? Let's say you want to remember the year Ghana gained independence, or the Second World War, let's say. Say, who can remind me when the Second World War took place? Somebody comes up with the answer, you say, thank you very much. So in 19 rather than be on stage, you're frustrated, you don't know the answer, and you're perspiring. Why don't you share that burden? Ladies and gentlemen, I just forgot the year. Who can remind me the year in which took place?
That's appropriate?
It is. Depending on the setting. Now, you can't do that in front of the UN General Assembly. But if it's an interactive session, or you're empowering people, or you're sharing information, yes, you
then
can.
you can.
Yeah.
What I wanted to ask was, if you're reading the news, you can't ask anybody anything. And if you miss a line, you've got to say something. No, it's not like you've got to say something, but you know, like you're reading and you skip something with it and you make a mistake. It's almost like a natural thing that comes before you figure out what is next.
You have a script there, isn't it?
Yes.
All right, so the words you're supposed to say are there.
Yes, except that, you know, you miss one. You miss one.
You missed one.
Yeah.
Yeah. At times, if you make that mistake evident, then people take note of it. But there's some techniques, I don't want to say tricks, because tricks sounds dodgy, but there's some techniques which you coach in terms of whereby you can go along and it's not that noticeable. Now, you don't do that with erroneous information, because somebody may be watching now and say, wait a minute, are you encouraging us to give erroneous information even if we're inaccurate? No. What I'm saying is that you missed a word and you continue. And if there are times that your teleprompter goes blank and so on, but you're very knowledgeable of the story,
you can say it.
There you go.
Just finish it.
Yes.
Okay.
You can. That's what I was talking about, the intent and the content. People who memorize, they know the content word for word, letter for letter, and if they miss one sequence, they become jellyfish on stage. But when you master your material, it means you're comfortable, you're conversant, and you're competent about the intent of the content. So even without your notes,
you can just
you
summarize.
can still summarize and keep it engaging. So now you're making more eye contact with the audience rather than your notes. You know, when we focus on our notes a lot, the audience see our eyelids, like I'm doing right now. I hope the camera's got me. I'm looking down at what I presume to be my notes. They're seeing my eyelids. You can't engage an audience if they're seeing your eyelids. They need to see your eyeballs. The eyes are the windows to the soul. So if you want to connect with your audience, engage your audience, you need to make more eye contact with the audience rather than your speech.
Okay. All right. So with reading, which is really broad, broken down now. Where do you go from reading?
The next one is writing.
Writing.
Now, I have a quote of my own. As a man writeth, so he speaketh. That's how
For real?
Seriously. Seriously, because when you're writing, you're speaking through the ink of the pen.
Oh.
And then when you stand in front of the audience, you're speaking through your vocal cords. You can't write down a word that you don't know. The same thing that you can't speak a word that you don't know. So writing is very, very important. And there are a couple of benefits to writing. Number one, you read a newspaper article, or you read your Bible, your Quran, a passage. You close it, set it aside, pick up your pen, start writing it in your own words. You may miss a thing or two. You say, wow, I just missed that. Let me see what I missed there. All right. And what you're doing is that you're developing your ability to remember things. Our mind can do more than what we put it to do. Some people say Albert Einstein used about 18% of his brain power. I'm not sure how accurate that is true, but what about if he used 50%? And how did they measure that? I don't know. But the truth is that our mind can do more than we actually put it to do. So writing is very, very important. And it also develops your vocabulary, because you know, it's easy to say something. Ask that person to now write it down. Then they start having to think. You're exercising the ability of the mind to think. And as you write, you may even come up with your own quotes. I have not quoted Shakespeare, Abraham Lincoln, and all those guys in a very long time, because now I've developed over 250 quotes of my own. So I'd say, according to Samuel Jonathan, you cannot change how you were born, but you can change how you perform.
That's beautiful. All right, so from it's reading, writing, and then what else?
The third one, very important, rehearsing.
Oh, rehearsing.
Practicing. It is so important. Some people say practice makes perfect. I say no. In the words of Zig Ziglar, practice makes permanent. Whatever you practice, it becomes permanent. If you're practicing the wrong thing, there's nothing perfect in that which is wrong. And that's why it's good to avail yourself for coaching. Athletes have the potential, they have the talent, but they need the coach to actually provoke them to bring out the best in them. So rehearsing is very, very important. For some people, that's what they focus on. They don't focus on the other things. And that's why sometimes people get on stage and they're nervous wreck and so on. Yeah. So
and I'm thinking, usually would say rehearse in front of the mirror. But I say sometimes when you're alone, when you're driving alone, you can rehearse.
Very good.
When you're in your kitchen cooking, you
when
can
are you becoming the public
pretend
speaking
you're
coach?
talking.
Come on.
You're teaching
when are you becoming the public speaking coach? It's true, while you're driving.
No, I'm still learning.
Aren't we all? But it's true, while you're driving, you can practice your, what you're going to say. You can even practice your greeting. You know that some people get on stage, oh, thank you, Miss MC. As the MC rightly said, my name is Colonel Jonathan, and wait a minute, why didn't you stop? The MC just announced your name. Why do you have to come on stage and the first thing you come up with is your name? It's so, so it's very important. How are you going to start off? How are you going to interact? What's going to be the icebreaker? Because when you're courting your audience, you're supposed to speak on something that has nothing to do with the topic. Just a few seconds, just to make them love it. And once the audience like you, they open up to you and the connection is established.
Love that a lot.
How to conclude. Some people give a nice speech and just say thank you. Oh, and the audience is like, then
People
one
are
person,
expecting more.
yeah, and then
They didn't
one
expect
person
it to
goes,
end that way.
and then they start.
They don't even know that you've ended.
They don't know because you did not conclude well. So even how to conclude, we usually coach people to have 3 versions of their conclusions. When you give a great speech, the MC doesn't have to come on stage and say, oh, you can do it better. I hear that a lot in Ghana. But you see, if you give a great presentation, the
Give it up for him again.
will applaud you. The MC doesn't have to come on and say, oh, you can do better, you can do it better. No, but when you conclude well, probably you'd say, ladies and gentlemen, before I take my seat, let's have a recap of what we've covered so far.
Oh.
That's one way. Well, ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, and then you give a powerful one-liner. A one-liner is a complete or incomplete sentence that summarizes the essence, the take-home message for the audience. But you've got to prompt the audience. You can't just finish and say, that's my speech, thank you. I can hear some laughter in the background. So all these things are very, very essential. And then how you transition from one aspect of your presentation to the other. You've given a wonderful introduction. People love you. Now you're about to go into the main body, the main meat of your message. And you just drop the ball and the engagement goes. And people are like, wait a minute, the opening was so great. Now the speaker has lost me. How do you keep them engaged? You're giving a 20-minute presentation. 20 minutes is a long time. 5 minutes is 300 seconds. So 20 minutes is 1,200 seconds. How do you keep them engaged for that length of time? We'll cover that during the next episode.
Yeah, we have another class. Do I call this class or session?
You can call it
on
a
Friday.
Class. Yeah.
Okay, so here's what we're going to do. On this particular one, how to develop your public speaking skills.
Yes.
What I would love for you to do, you're always on our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/joynews-on-TV. Please go there and let me know your comments from this particular conversation or session or class. What are your reservations? What are your fears from what you've heard? So that we can address it quickly before the next issue that we're going to tackle, because I want people to really get this and get this well. Okay, but let's briefly talk about your masterclass.
Okay, we're very excited about it because it's going to be an opportunity for people to actually have a hands-on learning experience of what we're talking about. Because the success of public speaking is not in the theory, it's in the doing. The masterclass takes place February 6, 7, and 8. It's a 3-day program, and we've actually chosen the weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And it involves people from the business community, the corporate world, even from a faith-based organizations, because when you have to give announcements to church, that's public speaking as well. Even sharing your testimony at church is public speaking. And so it's going to be taking place right here in Accra, Ghana, and it's going to be at Cleaver House, and that's going to be February 6, 7, and 8. Now, I'd like to give a phone number so that people can call and get to know more, and that's 026 22 77 325. Now, somebody's scrambling for a pen, so I'm going to give it again after I give the website. That's royalcenterforpublicspeaking.com.
Royal Center, www.royalcenterforpublicspeaking.com.
And the center is spelled the Anglo way, so that's TRE when you're spelling the center.
Okay.
Right. Now, the phone number again is 026 22 77 325. The masterclass, February 6, 7, and 8. Registration closes this Friday, so people need to. This is not one to procrastinate
like
on.
Run. Yeah. And it's really, really important. I've loved every bit of this one.
Thank you.
Can I say, ladies and gentlemen, Samuel Jonathan, thank you very much for your time.
Thank
we have
you,
another
Robbie.
session on Friday.
On Friday.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But I'm talking Bible Week celebration with the Bible Society of Ghana. I just said again, but I'm working on it. You know I'm working on it. So stay with me here on the AM show.